Hello and welcome to Unleashed, the show that explores how to thrive as an independent professional. I'm your host, Will Bachman, and I'm so excited today to have Melanie Espeland on as a guest. She is a McKinsey alum and management consultant, and she also works as an executive voice coach, and she is an approved certified voice actor. Melanie, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Will.
So there's so many things that I want to talk to you about here on the show. Before we started recording, we started chatting about like the world of voice acting, and that
Right.
that definitely something I'd love to talk about. But let's the first half of the show. Let's talk a little bit about how you coach executives and provide voice coaching. And I thought one way we could kind of enter that would be you could give me here a bit of a mini lesson so that listeners can kind of hear what you do, not just telling me, but actually showing us what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that'll be fun. And I think first off, what I'll do is I'll kind of explain my approach and kind of how I got into it.
Yeah,
Because I
yeah.
think
Let's
that
give
that's kind of,
give your background
it,
a little bit. So how did you get into this? And you've studied acting and singing. So give us a little background.
yeah, totally. So basically, how I kind of became an executive voice coach was I kind of naturally realized I had two very unique spikes in my skill set that you almost never find in just one person. I kind of like to joke that you never really meet an ex McKinsey voice actor. so, so basically, over my career, I've worked in various business situations. I've been in corporate Fortune 500s. I've worked in startups. I worked at McKinsey. I have the Columbia MBA. So I have this, very solid business expertise. And I also started to grow some of my more creative interests. I've taken singing courses, acting, voice acting. I'm also a signed voice actor with CESD Talent in New York and LA. And I started to realize that I had friends coming to me who were mid to senior level executives, a lot of them in consulting or finance or tech. And they basically would say, "Hey, Melanie, how can I reduce my pitch? How can I sound more convincing? How can I be less nervous before I have to give a presentation?" And so I realized that the fact that I had the business background allowed people to feel comfortable with me. And the fact that I understood what they were going through allowed me to be a really great coach for them. And so that's how I kind of started to become an executive voice coach on top of also doing my independent business consulting. So, yeah, basically what I do is I love to bring together just really diverse skill sets that I've been learning just throughout my life. And I'm just a curious person. So, I will bring into play, for instance, traditional speech therapy contexts, but I'll also bring into play, for example, acupuncture concepts. So, I love to bring into play lots of different things. And the work really ends up being physical, emotional, and mental. And other than that, would say that I mostly work with individuals one on one. So I love to make things customized, but I do also do some corporate trainings and I'm working on an online course too. So that'll be really cool because then I'll be able to reach more people and, really, really get to, yeah, talk to more people overall. So that's
That
a little bit about me and kind of my background and how I like to think about the voice coaching in general.
and how does the voice coaching run that you do? Is it sort of like one or two sessions and you're done, or do you work with people over periods of years, like once a week? Sort of, what's the typical structure of an engagement?
Yeah, I'd say it's very much depends upon the person and what their needs are. And I would say most people usually work with me for, I'd say, around 5 to 10 sessions once per week. And then from there, we typically go to meeting kind of ad hoc, maybe once a quarter or whenever they have a large presentation or something specific that they have to prep for. And I do, though, have clients that I've worked with for multiple months on end, just based upon what their needs are. So there's a lot of flexibility. And again, it's really about that unique person and that individual. I like to say that the voice is kind of like a fingerprint. Everybody has a different voice and it's unique to them. So working with you on your voice needs to be basically customized to you. And that's what I'm able to do in those one on one sessions.
And are folks often, in terms of their level of interest or where they're focused on, is it preparing people? I'm sure it's all of these things, but maybe which one is at the top of the list? Is it more about, oh, I'm going to be giving sort of the earnings call, or I'm giving a big presentation to the entire sales force kind of thing? Or, hey, just in my interactions at staff meetings, I want to be a little bit more confident and authoritative? Is it, sort of people most, like, where on that spectrum are people really interested in improving their voice?
hmm Yeah, I think what's really interesting is I find pretty much across the board, pretty much everyone that comes to me knows that these soft skills of understanding how to use your voice, how to really manage your executive presence, and really how to come into a room and kind of command attention. They understand that if they don't build those skills and if they don't understand how to harness that, then they won't move forward in their career. Because basically, you're going to get to a point where everybody in the room is smart if you're at a specific level. And so it becomes a little bit less about how smart you are or whether or not you're a subject matter expert, because the five people next to you are as well. And so it's all about, at that point, how are you communicating your ideas? Are you able to be convincing? Do people trust you in front of a CEO? Are you able to articulate your ideas and persuade somebody? So I think that for most people that come to me, they realize they're at a point in their career where this is super vital for them to work on. And then I'd say, secondly, what's been really interesting in the past few months is we're living in a world where your voice is so much more important than it's ever been. I mean, basically, you can no longer rely on connecting to someone through a handshake or direct eye contact or full body language, because everything is over the phone or over a Zoom call where you might be this kind of awkward floating head. So basically, your voice is becoming incredibly important in order to actually communicate and connect with other people. So I'm finding that that second group of people are coming to me and saying, I have no idea how to actually manage myself on a Zoom call. How do I command attention? How do I actually be successful in this type of new Zoom culture? It's really interesting because so many major corporations are staying remote through probably mid next year, maybe even late next year. So this is not something that's going away anytime soon. So I think that that's really been a big spike lately, is people just want to understand, how do I remain relevant and how do I remain impactful in this new kind of digital age?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to ask you about how things are changing with so many people doing a Zoom or video conference. What are some of the areas where people come to you saying this is an issue? I mean, I could imagine some of them might be trying to eliminate verbal tics, saying like or
hmm
or those kind of filler words. That might be one area that I could imagine
hmm
myself probably. Some people might
Yeah,
speaking too quickly or speaking too high pitched. What are some of the things where people say, "Hey, this is an issue, and this is why I'm coming to you"?
totally. No, you hit the nail on the head with a couple of those things you mentioned. I would definitely say, awkward pauses and filler words. That also leads to melody. So having a really beautiful melody with your voice where it's a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, it's easier for the listener to literally and figuratively hear you. I think that's very important. Having really clear diction, and that can also kind of play into how quickly you speak. I do find some individuals speak too quickly, especially when you get nervous. You have some adrenaline pumping, your body tenses up, and then your voice tends to quicken. So I do find a lot of clients just need help with that, and really kind of calming themselves, having a sense of ease, speaking a little bit more slowly, having super clear diction so people understand them. I would also say that a lot of people want to work on their warmth and how they connect with others, especially now over Zoom and phone calls. It can be really difficult to be warm, but also serious and professional. And I think that sometimes in our culture, we think of those as total opposites, but they're not. At the end of the day, humans are social beings. I mean, it just goes to show during quarantine that everyone is dying for social interaction. And so it's the same thing in business. You're going to want to connect with the person in front of you, even if they're just on a computer screen. So I think for a lot of people, they're just trying to understand, how do I be my authentic self? How do I communicate a sense of warmth, but yet still be professional and powerful?
I mean, there's also the content of what you're saying, and just
Oh,
some,
absolutely.
I mean, some people will frankly just talk too long, or if it really kills me, sometimes I'll be on another consultant when we're talking to a client, maybe an initial discussion, and I'm trying to send them text messages or something because the client will ask them a question, and what you want to do is maybe answer it, but even better, turn it around as a question back to the client. And
Hmm.
instead, they'll actually answer the question and go on for like minutes about, oh, well, I've done this before, and this is my background, this is my approach. It's just like so boring to listen to. So part of it is also just like being more conversational and not going on and on forever.
Right. I've definitely have worked on that with clients. To your point, sometimes it's just how you're actually structuring your content. You may be speaking for too long. You may not be structuring your ideas very clearly, giving a headline, maybe even numbering your points. That's definitely an issue that a lot of individuals have. And especially if someone's nervous, they may just kind of ramble for a little while. And you made a great point that if you're speaking for too long or you're rambling, it's going to get really boring super quickly. And so then you're going to lose your audience. And that's super important. You need to make sure that you're thinking about your audience and communicating specifically for what their needs are.
Okay, so let's do an illustrative mini lesson. Let's say I just came to you. I don't know if you would typically start with some kind of diagnostic, but let's just say I came with you as sort of first session. Let's illustrate for listeners and for me like what you would do if I was your client for a voice coaching session.
Yeah, sure. So basically, one of the first things I would definitely do is I always like to have a consultation so that I can get a better idea of what the client's needs are, what they think they need, what I think they need. And then I like to do a self assessment and also have other people that they work with or friends and family do an anonymous assessment as well. So that way we have multiple data points of feedback. And I like to do that so we have both some qualitative feedback and also quantitative. I have them basically rate themselves. And so we go from there. And I would say one of the best places to start is working on breadth and understanding your respiratory system and your diaphragm. So I think for you, Will, what I would want to maybe kind of start with is showcasing to you how do you actually breathe with your diaphragm. For some individuals that work with me, they have some familiarity because maybe they've had some singing training or maybe they played the saxophone or something like that where they had to learn this at a young age. But if you've never had to learn this, it can be quite awkward. So, what you're going to want to do is, in order to practice breathing with your diaphragm, I want you to put one hand on your chest,
Okay, got it.
and that's going to, your fingers aren't going to go higher than the collarbone.
Oh, okay,
And I
okay.
want yeah, I want the other hand to be basically on your belly. And I'm going to explain a couple things before we actually go into the physical movement. So, one thing you want to do here is you're putting your hand on your chest and your belly because you want to make sure that the movement in your body is happening more so down by your belly versus your chest. If your hand is feeling a ton of movement on your chest, it means that you're not breathing deeply enough and you're getting really shallow breath. So that's why we have the two hands, basically, in order to double check where you're breathing into and basically where the movement is happening. Now, additionally, you have your hand on your belly. Obviously, your belly is not actually what's breathing in and out. What's really happening from an anatomical perspective is your diaphragm is interacting with your rib cage to actually bring air in and out of the body. However, it's much easier for someone to just understand to put their hand on their belly and to feel belly movement versus to actually feel diaphragm movement externally. So that's why we put the hand on the belly. So again, anatomically, the belly is not actually breathing, but it's a great way for you to actually feel your body working.
Yeah, no, so I got my hands there. Now,
Awesome.
I did play the saxophone for a number of years. I never very well. I never got beyond like a beginner
Oh, no
stage.
way.
Yeah, but I played for a while. And when I was doing that, we would, at least, the training I was getting was you would, if you were taking like a really deep breath for a long passage, you would breathe in with your belly as far as you could, and then you would breathe like with your chest. So like you'd breathe in with your belly, your belly goes out, and then if you really need to keep going, you like breathe in with your chest as well, and like then you kind of go up a little bit with your chest, right? I don't know if that's sort of the correct answer though.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that the best thing, of course, to always do is get as deep of a breath as you can
Hmm.
and to be breathing in through your nose. That's also super important because when you're breathing in through your nose, you're just getting better quality of air. There's going to be more humidity to that air going into your body,
Hmm.
and you're also going to get more oxygen into your blood.
No kidding.
So, one thing that's really interesting is if someone is not breathing in through their nose often, if they're mostly breathing in through their mouth, you're also going to be a lot more tired and you'll have a more strained throat and probably a more strained voice. So, I have worked with clients who have found, oh, wow, my voice gets really tired. My throat gets super sore. That can potentially be because they're not breathing properly. And also, potentially, they're pointing their head upward or pointing their chin downward when they're speaking. So they're basically straining their vocal cords while they're speaking.
Hmm. Okay.
So that's also something to think about. And we can talk about that now once you get into this breathing exercise. What you should also make sure you're doing, not only have those hands in that placement, one on the chest, one on your belly, but make sure that you have, good posture. You can be sitting or standing and just roll out your shoulders. Feel free to kind of, wiggle around a little bit just to kind of loosen up your muscles. I always tell clients, don't be afraid to be silly, just kind of wiggle it out. And you can even kind of whip your hair around if that feels good. And basically make sure you're in a nice, straight posture. Have your chest pointed out, your shoulders nice and low away from your ears. And you're going to want to make sure your eyes and your chin are parallel to the floor. So, again, you don't want to be looking upward or downward because that's creating a more difficult effect. It's more difficult to actually get that nice breath out of your mouth and to get a really nice, crisp sounding voice. So, now that you're ready, what you're going to do is we'll do this together in a moment, but you're going to go ahead and breathe in through the nose. You'll keep your mouth closed during this. You're going to feel the breath moving into your body. You're going to feel your belly push out. And then you're going to hold it there for a few seconds. And then what you'll do is you'll allow yourself to breathe out slowly through pursed lips. So you're breathing out and exhaling through the mouth. And I want you to go ahead and do that slowly so that you can really feel the air changing in your body and your belly basically moving inward. So this is basically you feeling the work of the diaphragm. So
Okay.
let's go ahead together.
All right.
We should be able to hear each other do this. So
Okay.
go ahead and breathe in with me for a couple seconds. And then once you hear me exhaling through my lips, you can go ahead and do that as well. So go ahead and take a nice deep breath into your nose.
Okay.
Nice. That was good. You took a nice long exhale there. And that basically right there is just a really great starter kind of tip in order to start learning how do you actually breathe correctly? How do you breathe with your diaphragm? And it also helps you to establish a mind body connection. I do find with a lot of clients, they don't have a great sense of their body. They may not even realize, oh, wow, I'm not breathing correctly. I'm not, my jaw's super tight. They may not actually be realizing that these things are happening. And so if you lack an awareness of your body, there's no way you're going to be able to control it. Your body's going to control you and you're, going to have whatever voice your body's giving you in that moment. So again, this is a great way to just have your mind and body connect and just start to slowly understand what your diaphragm's doing and what it feels like to breathe in deeply. The other really cool thing that you can do
Yeah.
in order to kind of,
And I'll just
oh,
jump
go
in there.
ahead.
As this feels to
Mm.
me like it would be a great exercise to do while you're on a Zoom call. If you're not the one talking and you're kind of bored, you could just sit there. Okay, I'll put my hand on my belly and just practice my inward and outward breathing with my belly, like while I'm on the Zoom call, the Zoom meeting. And that
Yeah, totally.
and like it might sort of would just be a nice reminder. Okay, Zoom starts. I do my belly breathing.
Exactly. I love that. It's also a really great thing to do to calm yourself before you have a major presentation. I find that if your body is more relaxed, of course, your brain chemistry is going to change. Your body's going to get into a more relaxed state. Your voice is going to be more relaxed. You'll speak more slowly. Your diction will be clearer. And if you can showcase a sense of ease, it'll be much more easy to showcase a sense of really being a subject matter expert and also just be more convincing. If you think about it, someone that's super convincing is never someone that's going to come off as nervous. So having that relaxed body, breathing in deeply can be a really nice way to basically level set where your brain chemistry is at and where your physical body is at before you go into that major presentation.
Okay.
So lots of great uses for the breathing exercise.
Okay,
I
cool. So
would,
that was the first one. So
yeah.
so keep going. This is good.
Yeah, I would also just add what's also kind of a fun way to feel your diaphragm in action is to laugh. And basically, here, what you do is you're going to take your index finger and your middle finger of both of your hands and you push it basically into the spot at the middle of, I would say, your chest, right where your rib cage basically stops. Your rib cage is kind of creating basically an inverted V shape at the front of your body. And so you're going to be placing your fingers right in the middle of your chest, right where your rib cage is stopping. And so basically, you're going to put your fingers there. And if you can get an authentic laugh going, you can feel your diaphragm pushing against your fingers. So that's also kind of a cool way to feel the diaphragm actually at work. So another good tip.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would say beyond that, once you start to kind of learn about breathing, we also need to talk about tongue placement. So for you, you have very good diction overall, which is fantastic. And I would say for some individuals, tongue placement can be really important for diction. But even for you, I like the idea of talking about tongue placement because it'll allow you to project forward and almost have a speaker like effect when you are speaking. And that comes into play when you are speaking one on one, when you're in a presentation, when you're doing a podcast. Having better projection is always helpful. It will, allow you to sound crisper. It'll just add a little bit more gravitas to your voice, and it'll ensure that, of course, everyone can hear you. So when it comes to tongue placement, a lot of people place their tongue pretty much in the middle of their mouth. And it's not bad. You can understand what they're saying, but it's a little bit muffled. The more forward your tongue placement can be in the English language, you're going to get that really nice sound effect and be crisper. So, what I'll do for you, Will, is I'll demonstrate what I sound like when I have my tongue in the back, middle, and front of my mouth.
Okay.
And then if you like, you can also give it a try if you like as well. And here's the disclaimer. Pretty much no one speaks with their tongue at the back of their mouth, but I'm going to do it to just kind of showcase how different you can sound based upon your tongue placement. And I'm going to sound super silly when my tongue is at the back of my mouth. So I'll demonstrate this for you.
Okay.
So this is my tongue on the back of my mouth. Sounds super silly. Then this is my tongue in the middle of my mouth. It sounds okay, but it's a little bit muffled. And this is kind of how a lot of people speak. And then this is my tongue at the front of my mouth. It's much more clear, much more crisp. It's louder, it projects, it's crisper. So that gives you an idea of just how much tongue placement can actually affect how you sound. So I think that that's pretty cool because a lot of people don't necessarily know about that. And I find that for most clients, it's incredibly helpful, again, for projection, for crispness, for diction, all of these different things.
Okay, so let me try this here. So the tongue, when you say it's in the back of your mouth, you're kind of just scrunching your tongue back there, or and then
Yeah,
all right.
yeah, exactly. You're basically pulling your tongue backwards. So it's still going to be parallel to basically the bottom of your mouth or your bottom jaw. You're
Uh-huh.
not curling it in any way,
Yeah.
but you're basically just pulling it back as much as you can. So we're going to want to sound like this. So it's going to be kind of hard to understand you.
All
But
right.
if you really are pulling it back, it's all the way back there. So give it a shot.
All right. Okay, so here is the back of my mouth, and I just picked a random sentence out of this School of Life conference agenda that's on my desk here. Okay, so
Sounds good.
all right, so uh, uh, We want our work to deliver fulfillment, an expansion of our personalities and meaning, in short, purpose. Okay, so that was the back of my mouth. Now I'll try it in the middle of my mouth, which is probably where I normally speak without thinking about it. So here's just my normal voice. We want our work to deliver fulfillment, an expansion of our personalities and meaning, in short, purpose. So that was just me talking normally. And now I don't quite understand the front of my mouth. So I'm trying to like stick my tongue out a little bit more straighter and trying to really have it out there in the front.
Yeah, so I can help explain that a little more. So we move our tongues around naturally when we're making different sounds in the English language and really any language. So if you think about it, when you say the TH sound in English, your tongue moves super forward. So if you say the words, they thought the thesis was thorough, you're going to feel your tongue moving quite forward, almost in between your sets of two front teeth as you're speaking. And then alternatively, when you say the R sound, red, rouge, your tongue is moving backward naturally to make that sound. So if you want to just practice the TH sound real quick, they thought the thesis was thorough. You're going to feel your tongue moving forward whenever you say that TH sound.
Okay. They thought the thesis was thorough.
Very nice use of the TH sound. Love it. That tends to be kind of a difficult sound in the English language. But when you're saying that, you're going to be moving your tongue forward. So that gives you a sense of what I mean by a forward tongue placement. The tongue is just more naturally forward in the mouth. So you can try to give that a shot.
All right. So let me try that sentence again with my tongue all the way forward. All right. This is kind of a weird sensation to do. All right. We want our work to deliver fulfillment, an expansion of our personalities and meaning, in short, purpose. So,
very nice.
Okay.
Yeah, there was definitely more volume there, and there was definitely more projection. So I did hear a difference with all the different ways that you were speaking. So it's something that is a little awkward, as you were saying. It's kind of a strange sensation. It certainly takes practice. And I like to give that disclaimer too, because I find, certainly the listeners, I'm sure, of this podcast and a lot of my clients, they tend to be, type A personalities, super successful at the top of their game. And it's easy for them to get frustrated if they try the breathing exercise for the first time, or they try forward tongue placement and it's awkward and it's difficult. And that's completely normal for it to feel a little weird. If you're thinking about it, you're using your body in a new way. It's kind of like going to the gym and expecting to like bench press 200 pounds right away. It's not going to work well. You're going to have to build up to it. So I think it's an important disclaimer to throw out there is, definitely try these techniques, practice them. And, you can even record yourself doing these things on your iPhone so you can play it back, get a sense of what you sound like. I would highly recommend just sticking with it and getting that consistent practice in.
Fantastic. So that was, that's definitely something that I'll need to practice some. The belly breathing kind of comes a little bit naturally. I kind of get the idea of that. Particularly if you're sitting down, you could practice it like again on a Zoom or something. I probably need to remind myself maybe before I do a client call and I need to calm down and I'll do maybe that for a minute, maybe before I get on a call, I'll say, okay, my little pre-call ritual is belly breathing for 1 minute with my hand on my belly. But this tongue in the front of the mouth, I'll need to practice that because it does feel quite awkward. Stick it out there.
Yeah. And I'd say the other sound you can practice too that brings your tongue forward is the light L sound in the English language. So that would be words like look, light. Your tongue comes forward. It's in a different position though than the TH sound. With look or light, your tongue moves forward to the top of your palate behind your top front teeth. Versus with the TH sound, your tongue is moving forward and actually goes in between your two sets of front teeth. So they both move forward just in slightly different positions. So that may give you another point of reference for what it feels like to have your tongue forward.
Great. So these were amazing. When you work with clients, is there kind of a whole series of these that you have in your bag that you would have clients work on? I mean, we just did 2, but do you have sort of multiple of these that you work on some specific aspect of their voice?
Oh, sure. I mean, basically, what I do is I have physical, emotional, and mental tools because at the end of the day, all of those three things push and pull and work together to create your authenticity, your literal and figurative voice, your presence, all of that. So I do certainly have I would say, a running list of exercises that are physical in nature that usually are relevant for most people. But then, of course, I have more specialized things that I'll kind of pull out as needed, depending upon the client. So again, with the one-on-one training, it really is about what does this person specifically need? And I build the lesson plan around that particular client. And I would say that, I'm building a course right now, and I would say that to your point, there are a bunch of physical exercises like the two that we just did that are relevant for, I'd say, 95% of clients. So those would definitely be things that I would lead with in a corporate training or say an online course.
What are some of the mental trainings that you do to help people mentally prepare?
Yeah. I would say I love to work on building out some mental kind of storytelling skills. So some of those are going to kind of play into really taking really taking stock of your own kind of emotional Rolodex of life experiences. So really kind of tapping into let's get you into a specific mental state so that you can create a certain type of energy or certain presence depending upon the situation. So, for instance, if you want to come off as convincing and very commanding, and that's difficult for you, we may start to talk through what are specific moments in your life where you felt very much in control or very sure of yourself. And let's start to build out that memory together. What were you wearing? What were you smelling? Were you eating something? What were you looking at? Did you hear something specific? We try to get really, really granular with all the five senses and really pinpoint truly a moment in time. And the idea here is that you want to be able to pull from this extremely specific moment in time where we've painted such a clear picture that it's so memorable with just one word in your mind, you can kind of bring yourself to that moment and basically almost trick your brain into changing its brain chemistry and getting back to that moment. So that can take some practice, especially that takes in a lot of acting kind of training skills. So I find that that can be a little bit difficult if you haven't done acting before, but I think it's super relevant and incredibly helpful because you can basically trick yourself into really changing how you're thinking and feeling in that moment. So it really is a mental and emotional tool. So that's something I do like to build over time with clients and practice together.
I love that. I love that. That's a really cool exercise. As you were talking about that, it just reminded me how I was a submarine officer, and when you stood watch as officer of the deck or engineering officer watch, it really felt very much like acting, maybe improv acting, because you had all
Right.
these things that you would say, and you were playing this like very public role, and saying all these things that would be like canned lines, and it very much felt like being
Mm-hmm.
on stage. So maybe that's if I was working on that exercise with you, it would probably be like officer of the deck as we were going to periscope depth. There's all this fun stuff that you'd say,
I
like,
love that.
yeah,
Down, down Periscope.
yeah, no,
As you were
it'd be
saying
like,
earlier, down Periscope.
well, down
Approach your
periscope,
battle
yeah,
stations.
yeah, it'd be, you know, diving officer, take us to 60 feet, do not exceed a 3 degree up angle on the ship, helm, all ahead 2/3, chief of the watch, to maneuvering, make turns 7 knots, and then sonar got. And radio con, prayer to release 2 outgoing messages, QSL for own ships traffic, all those things that you'd say would be kind of the state of mind that I'd try to put myself in for that, like,
Love it.
sense of command. But even when I was doing it, it very, very felt much like being an actor, like you're training for this role. Okay, cool. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about your voice acting. So in addition to being a coach, you mentioned earlier
Mm.
that you're a certified voice actor. What are some of the different specialties of voice actors? I imagine that there's like audiobooks and
hmm
commercials, and you mentioned earlier before, like video games. What are some of the different areas that people specialize in?
Yeah, totally. Voice acting is this kind of unique, kind of underground world that not everyone knows about because when they think about actors, they think about on screen. And voice acting, there are a couple of different specialties to your point. So the one that I am, most accomplished in would be commercial. So if you're listening to a commercial on a podcast, for instance, or you're watching a commercial on TV and there's someone speaking over a couple of images, that's a voice actor. There's also animation. So all of your favorite cartoons, animated movies, all of those require voice actors. There's going to be, other than that, audiobooks, so narrating for those. In addition to that, there could be corporate e learnings, explainer videos. So, all of these different areas require slightly different skills. So, for instance, with animation, you can create kind of bigger characters that have more highs and more lows, versus with commercials, we were talking about earlier how the style has kind of changed. It used to be the kind of that big announcery voice, like tune in now. And it's no longer, that's not really in style. Now it's more so about a little bit understated, kind of conversational, girl or boy next door. And that tends to be more so the style these days. But there's still so much that goes into it. You have to think about your breadth, your melody, how you're saying the words, what words you're emphasizing, how you say a tagline or a product name. That's super important. And doing all this in such a way where you're selling it, but you're not actually sounding salesy. So there's a lot of kind of interesting nuances that go into actually prepping for commercial voiceover.
And there's so much into that. So, like with audiobooks, audiobooks that are read by the author usually are not that great. Um,
Right,
unless the
exactly.
author has done a lot of public speaking. Seth Godin does a lot of public speaking. He reads his own books, and they come across really good. But some they don't, and so there's really something about that voice. What types of work have you done?
Well, so one thing you can do is you can check out on my personal website, I have my demo reel. So on there, you'll hear an Apple Watch commercial, you'll hear Macy's commercials, you'll hear like a bunch of different things where I'm doing slightly different things with my voice based upon the style of the commercial, the product. So that's a great place to kind of go and hear what some of the nuances are and what my voice can kind of do, basically.
Fantastic. I'll
Um,
check that out.
yeah.
We'll include that link in the show notes as well. If you want to hear Melanie talking about the Apple Watch, awesome. Um, and how does one kind of enter that world? I mean, it seems to me like a really tough space because you know being an
Hmm.
actor,
Totally.
I mean, it's the look, but like everybody says, well, I can talk, and it's sort of like photographers now have so much competition because everybody has an iPhone. So, I mean, everybody says, well, I can
Exactly.
talk, I'll just record myself. How hard can it be? Um, and so, how does someone kind of break into that world of voice acting?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's kind of like any of the creative worlds or the acting world in general. It is difficult to break into for sure. I was always interested in acting and I'm a businesswoman, I'm very analytical, but I've always been super creative. So from a young age, I always was doing something creative in addition to being in business. And a couple of years ago, I finally just took my first voice acting class and I found that particular teacher, Anna Garduno. She's based out of New York. She has a company called Voice Forward. She's amazing. I just found her randomly by Googling and took a class with her and basically just asked her, do you think that I have any capabilities or talent here? And it just kind of went from there. And I'd say, in addition to that, I had, dated my share of actors over my life, and a couple of them who had friends in the New York kind of Broadway scene. A lot of them had also said, hey, you have a really interesting voice, or, oh, are you a voice actor? I had actually had people ask me that in the past. So that also gave me enough kind of gumption and confidence to even approach that first lesson. And I'd say from there, I ended up taking classes with also Paul Liberti through Actors Connection. He's absolutely brilliant and amazing. He does a little bit of everything. He does on screen, he does voice acting, He does puppeteering. He's just a Renaissance man. And just through all these different trainings and acting courses that I've had and singing classes, I ended up creating my first demo. And within, I'd say, a month of sending out my demo, just cold emailing it to agents, I got an agent. And it doesn't always work that way. But if you have a great demo and you have the right talent and you have the right teachers, then it is possible to land an agent through a cold email, but not the typical experience, I would say.
That's really cool. Let's talk for a minute about the other side of your life of management consulting. Can you tell us a little bit about the types of work that you do there as an independent consultant?
Yeah, sure. So I also do the independent consulting through my company, Espeland Enterprises. And that's something that I've been doing for quite a long time. I got an MBA from Columbia Business School. I worked at management consulting for McKinsey, as you mentioned. So have been building that consulting toolkit, if you will, for a long time. And I've done a lot of different things for clients. It could be really anything from helping a pre seed startup with a pitch deck and a financial model, all the way to helping, say, Facebook with a market entry due diligence on a global scale. Should we enter this market? What do the numbers look like? So definitely can do a lot of different things, really, from strategy to operations. I would say my spike there has tended to be in, I would say, consumer beauty and fashion. Since prior to business school, I had quite a long career in the fashion world. So I do work with a lot of clients that are kind of in the beauty or fashion, D2C, e-com type of sphere.
Fantastic. Where can people find you online?
So they can find me on, I have two websites. One is my company, espelandenterprises.com. Espeland is Espeland. So they can find me there. And they can also find me on my personal website, which is MelanieSespeland.com. S is for my middle name, for Susan, named after my aunt. So yeah, those would be the two places to find me.
Fantastic. Well, we will include those links in the show notes. Melanie, it's been such a pleasure speaking with you today, getting a mini lesson. And I'll mention this, if you're listening to this episode right when it comes out, we have an upcoming webinar that Melanie is going to lead for Umbrex members, and you listeners are welcome to sign up. So we'll include that sign up link in the show notes. If you're listening to this before September 24th, go ahead and sign up for that. And if you, after September 24th, well, shoot us a note and we'll send you a recording to that webinar that we're doing on September 24th. What time is it at, Melanie? I think we're doing it
Let's see. I think it's at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 Eastern.
12 Eastern. So 12 Eastern on September 24th. Melanie, this was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to the webinar that we're doing upcoming.
Yeah, same here.
Appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.